Heidegger, especially in the last few decades of his life, became obsessed with what he called the hidden history of the West. It wasn't the sort of history that historians usually talk about, things happening, battles being fought. Instead, it was the history of changes in worlds.
Heidegger saw that there were epochs in what he called the history of being, in which there were a whole different style of coping and a whole different style of everything.
Everything is. We don't usually think about what isness means, but in his view, the history of being is a series of 3 to 5 fundamentally different ways of conceiving of isness. And because, it's not like people walk around thinking isness is this or it's that. It's just they're socialized into it. They grow up learning to deal with things through practices in different ways.
There was this early Greek epoch, and that was an epoch in which the name for being was physis, and it means nature.
They had a sense that to be was to sort of emerge, to open up or blossom or dawn into the light, into the opening, and then to sort of wither away and to fade away.
Things were whooshing up, lingering a while, and then going away. Important things. Emotions well up and linger and go away. Moods well up and go away. Great athletic performances do that.
And that's exactly what you lose a sense of if you think that to be is just to be an object of knowledge.
Then what happened after that? The current understanding of being in Greek was poiesis, and poiesis means bringing things out. But this is like growing crops. This is nurturing. It was what craftsmen do. So like Hiroshi, they were helping the grain in the wood come out and show itself at its best. And of course, cooks do the same thing. They bring out what's best in the food, and they bring out what's best in the people eating the food, and they bring them all together. Something of poiesis is still left from that epoch, and it's kind of marginal for us now. I mean, the big banquets were the central thing for the Homeric Greeks, and the craftsmen were the central thing for the poiesis epoch. But we still have a sense of that, and just as we still have a sense of things whooshing up, the moods particularly. Now, then what's the next one is very interestingly different than poiesis. Instead of bringing out what's in things, the Roman understanding of being was to impose form on matter. And instead of bringing things out, you hammered it into shape. You imposed an order on everything. Their favorite thing, I would imagine, would be bricks. You just got this mud. You can't bring out the form in the mud by poiesis. You just make the mud into bricks. You make the bricks into roads. You make the roads into bridges, and you administer the whole Roman Empire. You kept down the crowd, as Virgil says the great person does. Then that sets up the Christian one. And finally, there's only one big producer, God. He imposes all the forms on everything. Everything has its proper place in a hierarchy, and everybody knows what to do because they've got that place. The king does what kings do, and the bishops do what bishops do, and nobody has to ever worry about whether they should be a soldier or a peasant or a bishop, because that's all settled for them in their given tradition, in their family, and their location in the scheme of things. What are all things then? Well, we have a word for it, we just don't notice it. They're all creatures. Creatures created by this supreme being.
And they thought that all the things were ordered by how close they would approach to God's nature. They had a notion in the Christian world of what they called noble metals, things like gold and silver. These were noble because the Christians thought they were more like God. They were incorruptible, they wouldn't rust. And so when you looked at gold, you thought that gold is much closer to God than just an ordinary rock. Right? And it was all organized around God as the highest and greatest thing in the universe.
It's a very closed world. If, as Heidegger thinks, human beings are there to open worlds, this is about as far from where we should be as we can get.
The way Heidegger understood it, the modern age lasted from roughly the 16th century to the 20th century.
The modern subject has taken the place of God. It's us who give everything its meaning.
What humans in the modern age were all about was dominance, dominating the world, subjecting it to their will. And so if you think about the great heroes of the last several hundred years, they were explorers and conquerors, bravely encountering new situations, or scientists who cracked the code and figured out how to manipulate things and use things, or cowboys who had this sort of deep inner will and they could go out and break down any obstacles in the path to achieving what they desired.
Now we're in something entirely new, what he calls the technological understanding of being.